I'll keep my freedom, I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. I'm going to keep my big BA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need. We know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas, and my guest today is my friend, my pastor, my dean, Dr. Jake Wade. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I like your new opening.
Yeah, somebody, this is just an example. This is somebody that listens to my show that put all that together and sent it to me. And if we all just do a little bit, if we all just chip in a little bit, if we all just, put away that 6-pack of beer put that off for a day or two, we could actually accomplish something, Jake.
I agree.
And you've tried, and they took that clip out of something I said, about Homeland Security or FBI showing up in the black minivans out there to want to know, to ask somebody why they were going to come on my show. And I've also told people that they've attacked me, that they contacted every stockholder in a publicly traded company. They contacted every stockholder to try to squelch a $1 million deal with me. You experienced that too, and frankly, I don't know, Jake. I don't know whether it's just that they're going after everybody. I used to call myself a canary in the coal mine, and if they're going to come after me first because of what I'm saying and what I'm doing and how I'm standing up to them and how I'm not going to bow down and bow my knee to anybody. And I know that you took the same oath. You feel the same way. You started the Little Red Schoolhouse 20 years ago. We promoted it on Free America. We were promoted on my shortwave when I was on shortwave all over, and you went on to expand that into Timothy Bible College, and now they're coming after you. They've come after you the same way they came after me. I don't know whether it's because you were on my show or because they're coming after anybody in America that's trying to stand up to this whole communist regime that we've had for 100 years, and people have been trying to point it out to us for 100 years.
Yeah. I read something that my ancestors, I am Cherokee Indian, and I have a ancestor back before the white man ever came to this country that made a prophecy. His name was the same as my Cherokee name, was Quanah Gray Eagle, and I'll boil it down real simple, he predicted or prophesied all that's going on right now back then. And we're going through this idea that something new has happened, and it's nothing new. You did Babylon. We are doing Babylon over and over again in this world, and we don't seem to learn from it. I wanted to say something, if I might, just to start out here. May I make a quick political comment?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Ron Paul is not our answer. We are. You started off by saying everybody ought to do a little bit. I have to greatly amen that, because the American people are the problem. We have gotten fat. We have gotten entitled. We have, as a people, looked to Uncle Sam for something Uncle Sam can't deliver, because there is no Uncle Sam. And it is that communist attitude, that communist thing, which was taught way back when I was a kid in college. It started in college. The Franz Kafka, little Lenny Bruce, all those people that got into our college mentality and began to teach the college students back then. We're paying the price for that now, because we have been educated by a communist approach, and it started in our, what we call, higher education. We are there now. We have been so entitled and so duped into thinking that the government ought to handle everything. Then we squawk because they're taking our rights to go along with it. And it's just like the employer in a corporation. If you work for the guy and you give him 8 hours a day promise, he can pretty well tell you what to do during that 8 hours, because you bought him for that period of time if you're the boss. The government should not be our boss, but when you turn your life over to them financially, we know what happens with Rothschild and their bunch. They see that as a way to control. And it seems to be a very simple thing, and here we got a Ron Paul that comes along and would be a wonderful leader for us if we could sit back as each individual and recognize this is a good leader. He's not a politician. He doesn't purport to be a politician. He just wants to fix things. And I think he could, but he can't without the people realizing that they need to change too.
And
we've got to change our attitude.
That is exactly what I just wrote about here. Up on I believe it's up on my website here, that the Tea Parties. Now, we thought I thought the Tea Parties was a good idea. I thought that was a good idea. I thought that was getting these people off the couches and out into the streets or into the parks, and to hear some speakers like that judge and Ron Paul. I thought that was good. And now the Tea Parties are attacking. They are attacking Ron Paul.
I don't understand that, except that I do know this, that when we send, well, I don't know how many we sent up there, 80 or something, whatever the new guys were, when you send those people, and I think they got a clear message. I think the message went with those that we put in a couple of Novembers ago in Congress. The problem is, and I warned Ben, I told all those naysayers that said that it wouldn't fix the problem, I said the problem is us, it's not them. When you put the representatives in there and send them with a mandate, you've got to hold them to that. And we didn't do that. The Tea Party's in the same genre of corruption, to the point that if you're not careful, they end up being the same thing they're fighting against, or should be fighting against. They fall into that same category. They get in that same quagmire of toxins, and they get poisoned.
I have this up on my website here, that the Tea Party Nation, this is one, there are a lot of Tea Party sites up. Everybody latched onto this Tea Party thing. There's Tea Party of Arizona, there's a Tea Party Nation, and Tea Party Nation came out and talking about Ron Paul and how he wasn't electable and this and that, and really slamming him. And I wrote him back. I said, Ron Paul is the only politician who cares for our Constitution. Your trashing and bashing of him is disheartening and discouraging to the whole movement. I was kicked out of a website claiming to be a Tea Party organization over an article some official sounding organization wrote referring to me. Clay Douglas, the Free American, and Larry Pratt, of the CEO of Gun Owners of America, is racist and bigots, which neither of us are. The story appeared after a member of the Tea Party who happened to be black appeared on my show. Pressure was put on him by the same groups like Southern Poverty Law and the ADL. He folded, canceled our second scheduled interview, although the first went smooth. And I said, I'm sure you are very familiar with who they are because you never say anything against them. They listed me in Armed and Dangerous for starting and promoting the militias, the Free American, and my radio show that I've been doing for 20 years. Rather, the Tea Party's push Palin, running mate of John Songbird McCain, who helped push the NDAA on Americans. What does Palin suggest? War with Iran? Instead of working with the operation, with the OWS, the Occupy Wall Street movement, or anti-war groups, you whine and cry. Divide and conquer is the key to the war being waged on the American people. When I was listed by the FBI and DHS as an extremist and possibly a homegrown terrorist, I walked into the FBI office, dropped a bundle of my magazines on their desk, and then told them to give one to each agent they had there. I was also able to walk out because I've done nothing wrong except try to defend our Constitution. They failed to tell you that when I started the militias in New Mexico, it was in the governor's office. So they went to Oklahoma City, blew up their headquarters, and tried to blame it on us. It would be the same agency that killed almost 100 people, including 17 little children at Waco, the same agency responsible for arming the drug cartels in Mexico, and I have that in parentheses. That means the CIA. I said, I bet this comment doesn't stay up on your site long. My phone numbers and books and radio shows are on my site. This will come out to you, Judson, in the email and on my site. I'd love to meet you, have you on my radio show. I'd like to be able to support you if you were willing to work with me. I'm easily accessible and hard to kill, although I've tried hard to do that. And Phillips responded, Ron Paul is nothing more than a crazy, racist, and anti-Semite. Don't waste my time with any more Ron Paul crap. This is your Tea Party speaking here. Jake.
Yeah, here's the problem, and you know how biblical I am. The problem with the mainstream church of nowadays, and I'm talking about what I would guess is 99% of them, they have fallen into this same category of reading the Bible, as long as they can find something that agrees with their attitude or their motivation. And when they come to something that they don't agree with, all of a sudden, well, they didn't interpret that right, or we can't go with that because men wrote the Bible and all that sort of thing. It's Holy Spirit inspired until that's something I don't agree with. And you have that same thing when you look at America. If I go and look in the mirror and don't think I am part of the problem, then when I see me in that mirror, I'm going to balk and say, oh, I don't want Ron Paul. I don't want to do away with the Federal Reserve. I don't want to do away with these things he's trying to write. I don't want to change. We say we want to change. And that was the Tea Party's platform. We're going to bring positive change. Well, they need to change where Ron Paul wants to get us, and that's back to constitutionalism. We are a constitution-based society that worked as long as we didn't forget the rules. We got people now that they come up against the rules and they want to change them. And I'm talking mainly these guys in black dresses that sit up behind a bench and claim their opinion is more valuable than the law of the land. We're so piled up with their opinions, nobody can find the Constitution anymore.
So we have our legal... Go ahead.
Our legal system's based on that now. It's by some opinion of some jerk in southern Alabama 20 years ago that decided it wasn't going to be the Constitution that he based his ruling on.
We have been, people don't realize that we fought on the wrong side in World War II. We fought on the side of the communists, and
yeah.
because we have been a communist country, Jake. Every plank on the Communist Manifesto intact in America, well, for at least 50 years, but they started 100 years ago with this thing. They started the same time.
Are you familiar with Dennis Cuddy?
Yes, sir.
He wrote a book on that almost got him killed, exposing our National Education Association as having the same major tenets as what Khrushchev brought as their way of taking over this country from the inside out.
Plank number 10, control of education. And I love plank number 9, corporate farms. Can you say Monsanto and Archer Daniels Midland?
Yeah.
And government control of labor. Well, let's see. You know, that's pretty much intact. And government ownership of factories and agriculture. Didn't the government buy into General Motors? Government control of communications and transportation. And of course, number 5,
and how
central
about
bank.
the BAR instigating a process by which they can control all the churches with what's known as a 501c3 corporation, which is just a stinking piece of paper, but all of the major churches are now under that.
And of course, they can't, in order to maintain their tax-free status, they can't mention anything about the politics. They can't tell anybody about Ron Paul, and they're not.
It's on page 4. It is a standard operating procedure format that the legal society has imposed upon the churches and on the 501c3 nonprofits, and all you have to do is change the wording, and you're still putting out a law. But most of these folks think, oh no, we got to let a lawyer do it. Well, you let a lawyer do it, you get it as standard operating procedure, and you got a gag order.
Well, all these lawyers and the judges out there have all been enabled because somehow they lost the real 13th Amendment. They lost it. Couldn't find it.
Yeah.
That barred titles of nobility from holding office. What you have right now in the courts is the same thing as the lords and the counts and everything in the whole English system. The banks.
We are mimicking what we claimed at the Declaration of Independence we were trying to distance ourselves from. We're mimicking the very thing in England that we were supposed to be getting away from as a nation.
Yes, and this, Thomas Jefferson, our founding fathers warned us, Jake, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, your children, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land that we conquered. How many Americans lost their homes last year? Over 1 million. Yeah. Who got the money? The banks. The banks got enough money. We're given enough money by your president to pay off every mortgage in the country. They could have given that if they had given that money to the people, let them pay off their mortgages. The banks would still have their money. The people would still have their homes, and we'd be a lot better off.
Are you the one that put up the expose on the $16 trillion that was meted out to not only our banks but foreign banks to bail them out, never reported and never asked to repay?
That's right. That was Ron Paul's investigation in there. They did an audit, and that's almost chicken feed. I mean, what they're putting in the and again, another one of your presidents, a Jewish president at that, warned us about the military-industrial complex. I think you could add military-medical-industrial complex.
Oh yeah.
Because they are drugging people down here in this country the same way they did with opium in the Chinese. They did it a little slicker. You don't have to smoke it out of a messy old pipe. All you got to do is go to the pharmacy and get a little pill. Mama's little helpers,
Well, Clay, let me pat you on the back or validate your position, if I might. As a whistleblower, as one who is so dedicated to the truth, you scare people, you irritate people because you bring out things like, for instance, Joyce Riley came out with an expose on the depleted uranium that ended up cladding some of our people carriers or troop carriers in Iraq, poisoning some of our men coming back and women coming back from over there with an incurable situation. I have met some of those people. They truly are sick, and nobody seems to know why. Well, Joyce Riley brought that out, and you routinely come up with these things. They end up on your website, and I don't understand why the plethora of this information doesn't impact somebody and say, you know, we got to stop this stuff?
Because I'm blocked in every library around the country. If you work at Intel or Intuit, you can't go and get the Free American there. And I've got the information up. I mean, I do this all the time. I update it almost all the time because right now, I said for 25 years, I've been telling you that this was coming. For this, they've tried to kill me and destroy me financially. Here is what is coming. A new bill has emerged that poses yet another threat to the American citizenry. Congress is considering H.R. 3166 and Senate Bill 1698, also known as the Enemy Expatriation Act, sponsored by Joe Lieberman and Charles Dent. This bill would give the U.S. government power to strip Americans of their citizenship without being convicted of being hostile against the United States. In other words, you can be stripped of your nationality for engaging in or purposefully and materially supporting hostilities against the United States. Legally, the term hostilities means any conflict subject to the war's law, but considering the fact that the war on terror is a little ambiguous in encompassing any action could be labeled as supporting terrorism. Since the Occupy movements began, conservatives and the Tea Parties have been trying to paint the protesters as terrorists. And you know, this is exactly what they've tried to do to me for 20 years, and it didn't have really any effect other than limiting my audience. It didn't have any effect because I can walk in the FBI office and walk out again up until now. Now I don't know.
Mr. Douglas.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Douglas, does anybody out there listening to you realize that you are the political science professor of political science at Timothy Bible College? I don't know that they do. I'm going to make that clear, and it is by way of validating your political science outpouring that you constantly put out. And the thing that people must understand is you're different in your presentation because you're being informative. You are saying this is something you should be concerned of. You don't, as most media do, you don't become a fearmonger. You are not a terrorist in that you're not telling everybody be scared of this. You're saying let's stop it. And that is totally different from most media, and that's why, like Ron Paul, nobody wants to give you the acclamation and the validation that you deserve.
Well, they've been calling me for 20 years the same thing they're calling Ron Paul. Ron Paul was a subscriber of mine for 10 years. So was the governor of New Mexico. So was the police chief in New Mexico. When they put me out in my name and the Free American out and guide to right-wing extremists, put out by the FBI, which was handed the data from Southern Poverty Law, you know, the police chief said, Clay, you don't have anything to worry about from me and any of my men. Besides, I've been reading your magazine for 10 years. And he said,
Can I say something about Ron Paul that might help your listeners, whatever listeners you have?
Yes, sir.
I'm not even, you know, I'm a nobody. I'm just somebody out trying to help our kids and trying to help you get our people back in the right direction. But Ron Paul came to my church. I gave him the pulpit. He preached in my church. We stood in the rain in a huge downpour with all of his security around him, telling him, you're going to get sick, get out of the rain. And he and I are standing in the rain talking about the education woes of this country. This is 9 years ago, in the parking lot of my little country church. I visited him in Victoria and in his little office on the coast. Never was I refused. He took me in, set me in his office, brought me coffee, and said, what can we do to fix this? He assigned one of his assistants to help. We got 18 schools going, partly because of his assistance. And every time I talked to the man, he was down to earth. He was real people. He is Christian patriot through and through. And this is not me being a politician. This is me knowing this guy firsthand. He is the real deal. And if we ever got him into the White House and supported him, he could make a lot of difference.
He could. He could. But, folks, let me say this, and I've got this right up on my website too. Let me because, and this is important because what Jake's doing, I want to support. What I've got up on my website, I've got Timothy Bible College up there. I've got Liberty Villages, and I've got the Oath Keepers, and I got you know, stories about and links for about hemp, one of our major crops stolen from us. But I said this at the top of my website: if you do nothing to help the cause of freedom and justice, you help the very enemy whose only goal is your total enslavement and destruction. If you fail to spread the truth of what is really happening, you become of the enemy's propaganda machine. When you fail to support those who are fighting on the front lines and risking everything for your benefit, you are giving aid and comfort to the enemy. You may think all is lost, but you couldn't be more wrong. Just as the people of Nazi Germany or Communist Russia, those monsters can be defeated and have been many times before. It just takes good people like you to help. Now, you can make a $20 donation and get a book of your choice in a PDF file. And Mystery Babylon is used by Timothy Bible College, isn't it, Jake?
Well, it's absolutely masterful history of what has happened.
It's almost an autobiography now, Jake. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I said one of the hardest things I got. How do you promote yourself? This is the hardest thing for me. How do you promote yourself without coming off like a conceited asshole? You know.
And you're going to get that anyway, because you're sitting up there and appear to be arrogant because you're telling people things they ought to know and they don't want to hear.
Why don't they want to hear it? I mean, I don't understand.
I can answer that. I can answer that because of the Little Red Schoolhouse thing. I had this thing going. I expected to have 100 schools out there within a couple of years. You were supporting it. John Stadtmiller had it on his program. We were on Alex Jones. It got out there. We had schools popping up. We had people starting them. And then all of a sudden, the brakes hit because there were still groups saying, yes, they would call me, yes, sign us up. We got this whole bunch. We want a school in our area because public school is so bad. And the problem I ran into is after the 18th school, I couldn't find anybody else that would stand in the gap, as it says in Ezekiel 22:30, stand in the gap, stand out in front, get on the front line, because here's the comment: I'm worried that they're going to come and take my house and my 3 cars, and I'm not going to be able to eat my 3 meals a day. I'm worried that I'm going to lose this pish life that I have. And yet we have forgotten, all of those people forgot what it took to bail out of that mess that England had us in way back at the Declaration of Independence when we broke away from the tyranny. It took a little guts. It took a little bit of that effort of saying, you know, what if I lose everything? I'm on the path to losing it now, because they're looking at the reason Joe wouldn't come on your show, because of what he just went through in the airport with them scanning and patting down his own 17-year-old daughter. He couldn't stand it, but he had to send her off to somewhere else and had to stand there and watch that, and it's degrading. They have totally invaded. They can peek in our window, and we have nothing to stop it. And it is a thing which we have given up that we need to take back. It is our own inalienable, God-given right to have a little privacy and a little self-determination.
People don't understand that anytime they take a right, you know, I've talked about, I did time in a Texas prison for marijuana back when it was potentially a life sentence. You know, the choice I was given, well, you can go for life, or we can get you 7 years. You know, and I got a lot done while I was in there. But I don't want to see anybody, any of my children, any of my grandchildren, anybody in the country go to jail for something they got in their pocket, for whatever because they choose to smoke marijuana rather than put pills into their body, you know?
Well, it's like a seatbelt. I agree with wearing a seatbelt on the passenger side at 80 miles an hour in a car that's